It's Wednesday, it's Uncovered. I'm Anthony Davis, he's Ron Filipkowski, and together we uncover the MAGA propaganda that is not covered by the corporate media. Ron, we have a lot to talk about today. I know I always say that, but we try and pack as much in. I think of this show as excellent value for money for our viewers. We should mention the hurricane, Hurricane Milton, of course, which is currently heading for, it's kind of Tampa, isn't it? It's really, Central Florida is going to get the brunt of it. I've actually had to evacuate my father-in-law up to Georgia, and I should mention the price gouging of the hotels, like crappy motels charging $300 for a night. It's ridiculous. So that, I know firsthand how difficult that is for people. Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans have been pushing an awful lot of misinformation and disinformation surrounding this hurricane. And there's even a lot that you could connect to their denial of climate change, because, of course, the climate scientists say that this hurricane is undoubtedly to do with the warming of the planet and the warming of the oceans, courtesy of fossil fuels. But maybe we should start with Trump and his surrogates and how they've been handling this. I mean, they've been basically saying that Biden is not doing enough for people, right?
Yeah. It's yet another thing in the Trump era that used to be non-political, non-partisan, which is natural disasters. The only storm I can ever think of that really kind of became political was Katrina, and that was just because it was such a disaster and such a mess. And that was when Bush famously praised his FEMA director, who had done nothing and was clueless. But that's really the only time I can remember a natural disaster really being heavily politicized. But in the Trump era, everything is an opportunity for them to take advantage of, regardless of what it is. And they like nothing more than tragedies, whether it's somebody getting shot or somebody getting, whatever, being a victim of a crime or something tragic happening to them like a storm. So, yes, I moved 4 months ago out of Sarasota, Florida, which is supposed to be the direct hit eye is being predicted right now tonight for Sarasota, where I moved to Maine from. I still have a couple of kids there that didn't evacuate, because they grew up there and they've been through a million of hurricanes. And so they always think everything's going to be fine. So 3 of my kids left, 2 are still there. So fingers crossed. So yeah, it's very aggravating when, you hear these knuckleheads talking about all this nonsense. Marjorie Taylor Greene has been continuing throughout the day today, talking about how Democrats are controlling these storms and redirecting them into red states. Her and her boyfriend have been on social media all day with their theories. So have many other people. Actor Kevin Sorbo is on with his theories. So it's fairly widespread. This is not like a handful of isolated people. And, a lot of these Republican elected officials in North Carolina, Georgia, and Florida have had enough. And they're kind of going on saying, this is not helpful. You're not helping us very much. And but, the Team Trump doesn't appear to be interested in trying to stop their people. It's the same thing with the election fraud and the January 6th. It's like, Trump could stop all this with one word, with one tweet, but he doesn't want to do that. He just wants to pour more gasoline on this fire.
Well, it was the same with COVID, if you think about it. More Republicans died than Democrats because they took Donald Trump's advice rather than the scientists' advice. Let's take a look at a clip from CNN where Lara Trump, who's obviously Trump family and now runs the RNC, is asked questions about this very subject. Let's
to listen to what the Republican senator from North Carolina, Tom Tillis, said about the rescue and recovery efforts.
I'm actually impressed with how much attention was paid to a region that wasn't likely to have experienced the impact that they did. For anybody who thinks that any level of government, anybody here, could have been prepared precisely for what we're dealing with here, clearly are clueless. But right now, I'm out here to say that we're doing a good job.
So he and others are saying, please, to the former president and to others, stop spreading misinformation because it's hurting people in North Carolina.
I'm so glad to hear that he feels that way, but it's coming directly from people there. You can go online and you can look at videos of people recording themselves and posting online saying, we need help. No one has come here. We have nothing. And no one has even addressed the situation in my neighborhood or my area. So I'm glad to hear that he feels very good about that. And I hope that we hear more of that. I want them to recover there as soon as possible. And it's tragic, the loss of life that we've already seen. I think that number, sadly, is going to continue to go higher. And it's a tragedy all around.
I want to turn to...
And she's doing it again. I mean, exactly the same thing. So they kind of create this double negative narrative where it's like, oh, trying to distance themselves, and then they just double down on the propaganda.
And nobody's saying that there aren't people in distress. There aren't people who lost everything. There aren't people who lost their lives, their houses. Of course, that's what happens in these horrific storms. But to then take the next leap and to start conspiracies and start blaming the federal government. Look, FEMA is not a first responder agency to natural disasters. That is not their role. That is the role of local and state governments to handle the immediate aftermath of a storm. So if you have an issue on that, the person that you need to contact is the North Carolina state and local authorities, who are doing their absolute best. I have no doubt, whether they're Republican or Democrat. And Tillis there, Tillis is a conservative Republican. He's supporting Trump, but he is a truth teller at times. And he has aggravated Trump at times for not putting up with his bullshit. He famously also, Madison Cawthorn used to be the congressman for that area that got hit by the storm. Tillis was the one who got him out of there. He backed his and endorsed his opponent and got rid of Madison Cawthorn because he was a clown. So Tillis is one of these right-wing Republicans who will sometimes tell the truth, when it actually hurts people and that he represents, which is refreshing. But, what does she do? She doesn't go along with later in that interview, she said, well, I saw a child clinging, to her puppy on like a raft or something, clinging for life. That was an AI photo. She actually cited a fake AI photo from a right winger that was going around on social media as her evidence that, people like Tom Tillis are not telling the truth.
I was scrolling Instagram, as one does, and in the smallest room of the house. And I came across a woman in Florida who had decided not to evacuate. She had not heeded the warnings. She instead was walking around her house, blessing the windows and the doors in the hope that God would protect her from the storm. Now, obviously, this is frustrating, isn't it? And again, this kind of plays into the kind of MAGA version of how the country operates or how the world works. This ties us in nicely to the news about Donald Trump's Bibles. Of course, this infamous special Trump edition Bible that contains the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things in there. There's a few things omitted as well, like amendment on slavery and the like. But you tell us the latest news on this, because I think it's. I know you're going to enjoy every single second of it. So, what's the big scoop here, Ron?
We've been on this from the first. I think I was probably the first one on social media who posted Trump's video of him selling the Bible the first time that he hooked up. I mean, this is a situation where I'll just recap very quickly, where Trump has figured out how to put his name and his on a certain product in a brand to cash out. That's not his product. In other words, he's not doing any of the legwork, any of the sale. The only thing he does is he'll cut a commercial in a particular situation like this. And then every time he goes on a Christian or religious oriented podcast or broadcast, he'll bring up the Trump Bible. And that's what he's doing to get his cut. And of course, when these first hit, one of the first questions that a lot of people had on social media was, where are these made? Who's made? How much do they cost? Because he's selling these for $60. They can't possibly be worth $60. And then AP broke the story. You saw Independent is in a UK affiliate of AP. They own it. But they broke the story that these are manufactured in China. I think they've shipped over 100,000 to the United States just this year alone. And the wholesale cost of these, the the Greenwood Trump people are paying $3 per Bible to China. Now, they could have it manufactured here in the United States, and it might cost, I don't know, $10. So instead of making $57 on each Bible, they might make 50. But no, they want the Chinese version so they can maximize their profit. And at the same time, Trump is talking about slapping China with massive tariffs because U.S. companies are manufacturing things in China instead of in the U.S. Meanwhile, this is what he is doing with his Trump Bible and with other things, many other products that he's selling right now. He's literally selling hundreds of products made in China. So is he going to slap tariffs on his own grift when he becomes president, if that happens?
This is the hypocrisy, though, of Trumpism. What he says and what he does are two completely different things, and you can apply that to all of Trump's positions and Trump's policies. And what frustrates me more than anything is that his supporters don't seem to care. They don't really seem to care about anything. They are so completely taken by him as an authoritarian leader, the despotism and the strength, the strongman kind of storyline, which is, of course, completely false, that they'll just take whatever he dishes.
Yeah, here's what I can tell you about that. There's two levels of sort of MAGA reaction to this, to Trump's kind of antics. Most of the time, their reaction is they're all in defending him. They're out there defending whatever he just said or whatever he just did. That's 90% of the time, 95% of the time. And then there's this other small percent of the time where they just go silent. And that's when you know that they're aggravated. They're annoyed, but none of them will speak out. None of them will actually criticize dear leader. They don't dare, because then they'll be out. They'll be ostracized. Anytime anybody's criticized him on anything, like a Jenna Ellis, they're out of the club and they're never allowed back in. And so they won't. How I know that this aggravates them is they won't talk about the Trump Bibles at all. They absolutely won't talk about them. They just are completely silent. This new story on China is obviously the Chinese Bibles is huge. It's blowing up all over social media. Right wingers won't even talk about it, and that tells you that they're aggravated, but they won't say anything.
I was watching the Good Liars, the boys on the Midas Touch network who go to the rallies and they interview the MAGA supporters and ask them questions, and it's brilliant. It's a brilliant watch. I love the way that they do it. But I've noticed recently that they're asking questions about Trump policy, i.e. abortion or trans rights, and the supporters don't actually agree with Donald Trump. They just haven't really thought it through. So they're like, let's take abortion, for example. They ask them the question in a way that gives them some autonomy for a moment about their answer. And they're like, oh yeah, no, of course it should be up to the woman and her doctor. It shouldn't be for the federal government or the government to decide what happens. And so then the chaps have to go, well, so you disagree with Donald Trump then? And they hadn't really occurred to them. And so this is something that I don't think really anyone's picking up on, is that there are Trump supporters who are not completely aligned with the extremist form of policy making. And we never really talk about those people, do we?
Yeah. I mean, it's a personality cult. Because, I mean, if you ask them, if you go to a Trump rally and go, do you think an elected official or politician should be manufacturing products in China for $3 and selling them for $60 while running for office, and they didn't know that had any connection to Trump, they would all say, absolutely, that's outrageous. That person should be put in prison. But then, if you tell them, well, Donald Trump did that, they would go, oh, well, I'm sure he must have had a good reason. It's what you're going to get back. So they're just willing to excuse. Look, these people all 8 years ago hated Vladimir Putin and hated Russia. Now they all love Putin and Russia because Trump does. So it's just like everything that they used to think, that they used to believe, will all bend. It's all flexible, and it all goes with wherever Trump is at. That's where they're at.
That is authoritarianism. This is why it frustrates me that the media picked up on that line, I'll be a dictator on day one. And then they kind of misconstrued it and turned it into for a day. Because everything that Trump did during those 4 years and everything he continues to push now, it comes under the playbook of authoritarianism, dictatorship, extremist policies and views. And it's very frustrating for me that connection isn't made. And people are just expecting him to behave a certain way on day one and then go back to being a kind of, I don't know, a kind of showbiz personality from day two onwards.
You know what I hear time and time again from Republican elected officials about this, and right-wing media, the Fox, the Newsmax hosts, people like that, is what they will say is like, look, this is just Trump talking nonsense and talking crazy, trying to get publicity, trying to get people worked up. Yeah. He's not actually going to do any of these. So when he threatens this, like he did this morning, CBS, and says they need to be investigated and they might need to lose their broadcast license because of their Kamala Harris interview, they'll say, oh, he's not serious. He's not actually going to do that. He's not actually going to abandon Ukraine and pull aid out of that. That's just Trump being Trump. And what they cite is, well, he didn't do it. He didn't do those things last time. And what I would say is, look at the people that he had in his administration last time. There were guardrails were there. Kelly was there. All his chiefs of staff were there. Jeff Sessions were there. All these people were there. Bill Barr, that told him no constantly. No, you can't do that, sir. And some of the things that he wanted to do got through. That safety net of people telling him no, Milley and Esper, we can go on and on of all these people who told him no constantly, Pence, and yet he continued to insist on doing these crazy things, and a few of them got through, but 90% of them were blocked. But now, not only are those people who told him no not going to be there, in fact, the people he's talking about bringing in for a second term are much worse than he is in many respects. So instead of those people being there to tell him no and check his worst impulses, they're actually going to be the ones bringing him terrible things. And of course, he's not going to say no to any of it. And so this is why I would say to these ridiculous establishment Republicans, people like Lindsey Graham, people like Tom Tillis, it's like, oh, he won't do that. He didn't do it last time. It's like, look at the people he's talking about bringing into his cabinet this time compared to last time. They're all crazy nut jobs. And so that's the problem. And I never hear that pushback ever being made.
And there's two other things that have happened since that didn't happen when he was in office. One was January 6th. So what's come since January 6th has repositioned Donald Trump and his view of America and his desire. He thinks that the election was stolen, that he should be the rightful president. So that obviously is a huge shift. And the other thing is the legal cases against him, where he's actually had to go to court and be held accountable for his crimes. And those things weren't happening while he was in office. And so there is so much more on the retribution list now that was not there during his first term. Oh, sure.
Yeah, he has all these scores to settle that he didn't have when he took office in 2017. Yeah. I mean, he was willing then, okay, we'll let bygones be bygones, whatever little jabs that were made during the campaign. But nobody really seriously went after Trump that badly in 2016. Now, the list of grievances, and so you're right, he didn't have all this hit list of people that he wanted to go after who wronged him in some way in 2017. That didn't exist. And so now he has that list. He has a long list of people that he wants revenge on, whether it's judges, lawyers, people in federal agencies, prosecutors, elected officials, people who served on the January 6th committee, who are now private citizens like Cheney and Kinzinger, people who voted to impeach him, media companies, reporters, Michael Cohen. And what the establishment Republicans will say is he's not really going to do any of that stuff. He's not going to go after these people. He's not going to pull people's broadcasting licenses. He's not going to have people arrested. He's not going to have his IRS audit them. He's not going to do any of that stuff. Yes, he is going to do a lot of that stuff.
And more.
And they're just blind.
He actually said in an interview recently that for all of these extreme policies, he doesn't need Congress. He said the president has so much power. Do you remember? And he was basically alluding that
sole authority.
All authority. So he was referencing that he will use executive order to do all of these things.
Yep.
And, you know, executive order was really supposed to be used very occasionally, wasn't it? And in recent years, it has become the kind of de facto way of getting stuff done because of the blockade in Congress.
Yeah, look, I had issues with Joe Biden in 2021. I thought that Joe Biden was way too heavy-handed with executive orders. And I think he felt like because of the pandemic and because of all the craziness with Trump that Trump did, he had to undo a lot of that stuff quickly. So I understand his reasoning, but I still do not agree with government by executive order. They should be extremely rare.
Yeah.
But every presidency, it seems like for the last 30 years or so, each successive president has used them more and more and more. And I don't think the Supreme Court I don't know that the Supreme Court has ever really had to rule much on this stuff, on executive orders and what the limitations of them are. They have ruled a little bit here and there. I mean, when something is clearly in conflict with a specific provision of the Constitution, but like, for example, Trump has said he wants to implement these tariffs by executive order. I don't think the Supreme Court's ever weighed in on that. So, but if they do weigh in and basically just say, oh, the president has carte blanche to do basically almost whatever he wants, like Trump thinks, then all bets are off.
Let's talk about Vladimir Putin, because, of course, he is making the headlines this morning. And in fact, it was just confirmed by the Kremlin that Donald Trump did send these Abbott testing machines, COVID testing machines, to Vladimir Putin for his own personal use at the beginning of the pandemic. And then we've also heard that he had up to 9 private conversations with Vladimir Putin, even after he left office. This is a huge story, really, isn't it? And I really hope that people see that it's not just about COVID machines. It actually goes far deeper than that, because at the beginning of the pandemic, I mean, my memory really was watching the pictures coming out of New York City and seeing, you know, people queuing up to get into hospital, people coming out of hospital into those refrigerated morgues outside in the streets. I mean, it was like a war zone. Meanwhile, the president is sending these machines, these testing machines, because that was the hardest thing to get tested. I worked out I spent around $1,500 just paying for COVID tests, you know, in the local area, private tests, driving all over the city to try and find a place that was testing, because we didn't have those home rapid tests yet. And it's crazy that his boyfriend, Putin, is getting special attention. What were your thoughts on this when it broke?
You know, one of the most frustrating things for me throughout a lifetime being involved in politics in one way or the other is that American voters don't care about foreign policy when they vote. I have no idea why. Maybe it's because we're not as affected as much by what happens with our neighbors, you know, as say Germany is, or France, who is very interconnected, independent. You know, American voters, it never resonates. It's always like foreign policy is always like 29th on the list of their concerns, right? And it really should be more. I mean, probably the best example of that was the 1992 election of George H.W. Bush versus Clinton, where you had Bush's approval ratings on foreign policy were like 90% in 92. Like, they were off the chart. Domestic policy, he was very lowly rated, but foreign policy, he was off the chart, like the highest rated president ever on foreign policy to run for reelection. And Bill Clinton had no foreign policy experience at all, zero. He never even served in the federal government before. He was governor of Arkansas, and yet, you know, defeated George H.W. Bush. So that showed that, like, foreign policy really has no impact on elections. So here you have a situation where, like, clearly Donald Trump is in bed with Vladimir Putin. He constantly praises Viktor Orban, Kim Jong-un. The things he says about foreign policy are just inane and ridiculous. And yet, like, it's the American voters just don't, it doesn't seem to register or resonate with them. I mean, this is a situation where Putin wanted this for himself personally, because he wanted the people coming into the Kremlin, people he was meeting with, to be able to rapidly test, and he didn't trust his own equipment and his country's own machines. Wow. So Trump did him a solid and sent him stuff so that this was done, and they kept it secret. And Putin was smart enough to even tell Trump, you need to keep it secret, because look, nobody in Russia is going to care. It's the American people are going to go nuts if they found out that at a time when our hospitals are scrambling for this crucial testing equipment, Trump is secretly sending it to his friend Vladimir Putin. To me, like, that should automatically be a disqualifier. I don't even need to know anything else about that candidate. But it seems like the American public, I don't know, it's like the right, the people in the center, they just don't seem to care very much.
Well, so much has been written about it, right? It's a combination of American exceptionalism and American isolationism. And I think that those two, if you put the Venn diagram together, what you get in the middle, tragically, is this, it's almost a kind of an authority over the rest of the world, that it doesn't really matter because we're America, the great might of America, the great American military and the great American democracy and all of the things that make America great. And unfortunately, what people don't realize is that if you take that stuff for granted, it is so easy for it to slip away. And that really is why this upcoming election, the stakes are so high. And to be potentially voting in somebody who doesn't understand how Vladimir Putin is a foe rather than a friend. I mean, no one really analyzes in the media. They don't ever really talk about the fact that Donald Trump's handle on foreign policy is, well, why shouldn't I befriend the dictators? You know, he thinks that making friends with them is his idea of diplomacy. It is so frustrating.
And they don't want to be. He wants to be friends with them.
Yeah,
they're not interested in being friends with Donald Trump.
Well, it gives them
they're
access.
interested in manipulating him.
It gives them access to
the United States through
so
him.
much easier to manipulate someone that wants to be
So,
your friend.
The COVID test is like a historical outrage. Okay, that's fine. But the secret phone calls maybe bother me more than anything.
Yeah, me too.
Which is, Trump has continued to conduct this like shadow foreign policy where he's, meeting with Netanyahu, meeting with Orban, calling foreign leaders, talking to the Saudis, undermining the United States government, violating the Logan Act, undermining U.S. foreign policy by contacting one of our worst enemies and having secret phone calls, which he's never disclosed. He's never admitted them. He's never said what the conversations were about or why they were having them. And again, it just seems like the American public, elected Republicans, don't seem to be bothered too much by it, don't seem to care. But can you imagine if this was like Barack Obama having like secret conversations with Putin or Xi Jinping or somebody like that?
But people have Trump fatigue.
Go crazy.
It's almost like if Trump thinks that he breaks every law and protocol and convention of leadership, then eventually people are just going to become so immune to his antics that they won't even bother. I mean, the Logan Act, which you just mentioned, I mean, that really should have put him on the stand and disqualified him from running again. And yet, no mention of it. I mean, why not?
I don't know. It just seems like there's just no will, to use the court or to use anything like that. Like things like the Hatch Act, the Logan Act, the War Powers Act, all these things that were done to sort of rein in and limit the power of presidents or even ex-presidents, all just seem to be ignored in the case of Donald Trump. It doesn't matter. None of that stuff matters anymore. But
that's authoritarianism, Ron. That what you just described, a completely ignoring all of these safeguards and guardrails, that is the rise of authoritarianism. When people are like, let's just worship that guy and we're not going to worry about the details.
Yeah,
he's achieved it. He's already the dictator.
He's a strong man. Yeah, we just let him do what he wants. He knows best. He'll do the right thing. So let's not worry about all this other nonsense, right? I mean, it's basically somehow the Republican Party, the party of limited government, has embraced authoritarianism right before our eyes. And I never thought I would see it. Honestly, I never thought that this would happen. And for it to happen, I could see if it could happen with like a dynamic, charismatic, intelligent, brilliant conservative leader, then I could see maybe that happening. But they're doing it for a huckster, stupid con man charlatan. They've abandoned all their principles and the Constitution for this guy. That's the part that baffles me.
I have an opinion on this. I actually think they see Trump as a useful idiot. He's a vessel. He's an empty vessel. That vessel is also a Trojan horse, so that those controlling the party, and we mentioned talking about Peter Thiel, for example, and trying to get J.D. Vance into that top spot, and maybe Trump is just a kind of gateway to their Christian nationalist plan for America.
Well, look, he expanded their voter base, and that's really the key here, is that the Republican Party in 2016 was well on their way to being a 43% party. You know, after Obama, after the Romney, it was a steadily declining in registration and voter turnout party, lacked enthusiasm, etc. And I think a lot of those establishment Republicans like the McConnells had resigned themselves to being a permanent minority party in America and just maybe hanging on, blocking things with filibusters and judicial appointments and things like that. But what Donald Trump did for them is brought in this huge chunk of new voters, these new people that had never voted before, and expanded the base of the party from probably a 43%, 42% to a 46, 47, which actually really bailed out a lot of their members of Congress and senators who, without those Trump voters now being part of the Republican Party, they would get wiped out. They would lose their races, people like Ted Cruz and people like that. And so if Donald Trump ever took those voters and left and said, don't show up, don't vote, or we're going to start a third party, they know that they're all screwed. And so that's the hold that he has over them. He literally has control of the party because he has control of their base.
I think that, Trump is 78, right? And he's clearly not well. And I've, in the last couple of rallies and things, I've seen him really quite jacked up. I mean, the way he's been behaving is super weird. And I was thinking, maybe putting Lara Trump in at the RNC, obviously that's a good move for him, but I wouldn't be surprised if he still has a good relationship with Ivanka, his daughter/wife, whether he would put her into a senior position again. Certainly Donald Trump Jr. is being positioned for some kind of role in the dynasty. Just talk to me about this story with Deloitte, where Jr. is basically making threats.
This is kind of unbelievable because you have so many. Obviously, Trump is making a lot of threats to a lot of different people in a lot of different organizations that he's going to do this, he's going to do that, and maybe he's going to go after this person or that person. But it's not just Trump. It's actually all the people in Trump's orbit are also out there every day making threats. I follow them. I watch their podcasts. When we get in, we're going to do this. We're going to go after this person. We're going to go after this company, this corporation, this prosecutor, this judge. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And here you have the president's namesake, oldest son, saying that he's going to try and pull $2 billion in government contracts from a consulting accounting firm, Deloitte, because one of the guys, J.D. Vance's old college friend, one of the guys who leaked the private text from Vance where he was like criticizing Trump in 2020, works for Deloitte. And so basically what Junior is saying is, well, maybe when we get in there, we should pull all these contracts from Deloitte. Now, Deloitte is very careful not to ever take sides in partisan issues and partisan politics.
Because it wants government contracts, right?
they want to maintain their business with the federal government regardless of which party is in power. They're like Israel in that respect, where they try not to burn their bridges with either side because they're so dependent on the government. And so if you look at their campaign contributions, they donate exactly the same amount to Republicans and to Democrats. They don't endorse anybody. Obviously, they stay out. So you have Junior now threatening them to pull their contracts. And Jason Miller, Trump's senior advisor, said, yeah, this sounds like a great idea. He said they effed around and now they're about to find out. So yet another, and of course, what would a Lindsey Graham or a Tom Tillis or a Mitch McConnell say? Oh, this is never going to happen. That's just the Trump people talking junk. Listen, I absolutely believe a lot of this stuff is going to happen, this revenge and retribution show. And it's going to be just horrifying. And the frustrating part is that so many moderate Republicans and independent voters just don't get it. They just don't see it. They don't understand that this stuff is real. He's not bluffing. He really is going to do some of this stuff.
That is why, we're talking as if Trump's going to win, aren't we? We're saying if he gets in, But we should caveat that. He cannot win. He cannot win. And I've been saying recently at the end of my videos, nobody in their right mind will vote for Donald Trump. Now, that there's a kind of double narrative in that sentence, because there's an awful lot of people currently who are not in their right mind, who are ignoring all of the stuff that we've just been talking about, the dictatorship, the relationships with the foreign foes, because he's lying to them about the fact that he's going to cut their taxes. And even in the polling that I've seen recently, where still they think that Donald Trump would be better for the economy and for inflation than Kamala Harris, when his financial and his kind of fiscal plan has been rubbished by all the top economists, saying that it would be a disaster, it would literally crash the world economy. And still people are like, yeah, that guy, with the 6 business bankruptcies, who's in court for fraud and everything else, he'd be better for the US economy. It is a terrifying notion. He cannot win, Ron. He cannot win.
It's going to be just a horror show. People really that I talk to that are those low information voters, the casual voters, they really don't get it. Who say that they're going to vote for Trump. They're going to vote for Trump because, he'll deport all the migrants, or, he'll do something about crime, or he'll cut taxes, or no tax on tips. They all have their individual reasons for it. But they just don't get it, that what this guy is going to do. And, on the one hand, it's like, oh, I can't wait to tell all these people I told you so when he wrecks the country. But of course, I don't want to be in that position. I don't hope I don't get the chance to say that. But I do feel that if he does somehow win, there's going to be so many millions of Americans 2 years from now who are going to be going, what the hell did we do? What the hell did I do? How did I make this mistake and put this lunatic in charge? And I just hope there's not enough of them. It'll
be the same regret that a lot of them had about not getting vaccinated from COVID, because they were told that it was a bioweapon, or the ones who, took a horse dewormer or drank bleach. The regret is often too late. And, 1.2 million people died in the pandemic in the US, many of whom might still be alive if it wasn't for Donald Trump's use of language and denial that it would just go away in a flash. It's terrifying. And when we talk about natural disasters, as we are with these hurricanes, the fact that something like this has been politicized to this level, it's almost as if Republicans have the value of human life to Republicans is far lower than it is to regular people.
Oh, absolutely.
And you could apply that to mass shootings and school shootings, to kids and cancer and all sorts of things. Yeah. They just, I don't get it. It's like, how did the culture get to a point where a human life doesn't have the same value as it does to people in reality?
There's no sense of collective responsibility. to your fellow man. It goes back to that belief in the individualism versus the collective. That they just believe that you should be able to do whatever you want and nobody should stop you, and so you have no responsibility to try and make sure that whatever you do or whatever activities you undertake don't harm other people. Or, I need to have an AR-15 because I think it's cool, without ever considering that, well, but if they're legal and you're able to get it, bad people are able to get it too, and they do bad things with those things. So maybe you should give up that right in order to benefit society as a whole. They don't see the world that way.
But they want to defund FEMA. They want to defund NOAA. They want to defund all of these essential organizations that are helping us, federal organizations that are helping us during this period of natural disaster. They want to defund those and get rid of them and disband them. What's that going to do for the people of Central Florida in the coming 24 hours? How will that play out in a year's time in the next hurricane? The same with, all of the support we had during COVID. None of that would come back if Donald Trump was in office.
Well, they like to vote against all these things so they can say that they're fiscal conservatives or complain about government waste. But then as soon as a natural disaster happens in their district, they're the first ones in line screaming for FEMA, as Anna Paulina Luna is right now. Her district is going to get a direct hit tonight, and she voted against FEMA aid in 2021.
And we should probably mention that Joe Biden has requested that the House reconvene to vote on more funding for FEMA in light of Hurricane Milton. And Speaker Johnson has clearly been told by Donald Trump, you're not bringing people back before the election.
Yep. It's just not going to happen. Campaign's more important.
The campaign, yeah. It reminds me of the fact that COVID came the same year as an election year last time, and look how that ended up. And here we are with another election and another major disaster. And again, the politics comes first. Very weird. Okay, listen, we have to take a quick break, but I want to come back and talk about that weird Elon Musk appearance at the Trump rally. We'll do that next here on Uncovered. Have you had difficulty focusing lately? Things like parenting pressures, work challenges, school commitments, or just personal drama can all wreak havoc on your ability to stay focused and productive. Well, if this sounds like you, I know something that could make a real difference. Calm. Calm is the #1 app for sleep and meditation, giving you the power to calm your mind and change your life. Calm knows that everyone faces unique challenges in their daily lives, and mental health isn't about a one-size-fits-all solution. That's why Calm offers a wide range of content to help you navigate life's ups and downs. With meditations to help you work through anxiety and stress, boost your focus, build healthier habits, and take better care of your physical well-being. Expert-led talks designed to help you handle grief, improve self-esteem, care of relationships, and much more. Calm puts the tools you need right in your pocket and can help you dedicate just a few minutes each day to live a happier, healthier life. Stress less, sleep more, and live better with Calm. For listeners of our show, Calm is offering an exclusive 40% off a Calm premium subscription at calm.com/uncovered. Go to calm.com/uncovered for 40% off unlimited access to Calm's entire library. That's calm.com/uncovered. Welcome back. And you can find links to our sponsors in the description below. Okay, Ron, let's talk about Elon Musk for a moment, because he has, we've talked over the last weeks. By the way, this is our 72nd episode together. I don't know if you're aware of that. 72 times you and I have convened on a Wednesday. And when we first met, Elon Musk wasn't really doing politics. He was kind of, staying out of it, and we weren't quite sure where he stood. Well, there is no question now as to who it is that he is in the tank for, to the extent that, what did he call himself? Dark MAGA when he showed up wearing a kind of black MAGA hat. I mean, this is like next level Batman baddie stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, he's really come unravel. I mean, he's all in. He's all in.
Yeah, all in.
I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the ketamine, the drugs, or obviously he wants a lot from the federal government. He gets a lot from the federal government. But here's another guy with extensive business ties to the Chinese Communist Party. He's an oligarch. He's all about EVs. I mean, all of the things that like the MAGA people should be against. But and a lot of the MAGA people didn't like Elon Musk 2 years ago at all, But now they love him because he bought Twitter and reinstated a lot of their heroes who have been permanently banned. And now he's backing Trump. They didn't like him. They didn't like him very much when he was backing Desantis in the primary, but they've forgotten that now. All that's let bygones be bygones. But yeah, the thing is that I don't really know how popular he is with American voters. I know he's popular. He has his own little cult, but I'm not sure that those are the people that are going to decide this election. When I think about Musk and I think about him claiming that he's going to go in and campaign in Pennsylvania, which he now claims, I think that's going to hurt Trump more than help him is my gut feeling, because he's not a good public speaker. I think he's personally very offensive, annoying. He's kind of a dick. And so I don't think he's going to connect with the kinds of voters that Trump needs to pull here at the last minute in these swing states. His money is certainly helpful to the Trump campaign. And so I think his sort of whatever, but again, I kind of get the feeling that he's being taken, his PAC that he's set up, the America PAC, is being taken advantage of by a lot of these right-wing grifters. I think that what we're going to find out after this election is over is that a lot of the money that Musk put into this went into the pocket of charlatans and grifters who are basically scamming him right now. I could be wrong, but that's the feeling that I get when I look at the people in the orbit of his PAC and what he's spending money on. There's some shady operators here. So again, I don't think that Musk being on the campaign trail is helping Trump at all and could hurt him. But I think that his manipulation of the Twitter algorithm and the Twitter platform has been extremely helpful to Trump, for sure.
Let's take a look at a moment of his appearance at the recent rally. Here it is.
Rocket company is the only reason we can now send American astronauts into space. Take over, Elon. Yes.
When you give your kid too much sugar and you go around to someone else's house, that's what I was getting from that guy just then.
I actually heard from a couple of the MAGA influencers. It's very rare that you're going to hear any criticism of them, but yeah. I did hear from some after that appearance, and basically what they were posting was like, why did he have to do that? Like, what they were hoping, and this would have been very effective, if Musk had showed up and with a good speech that he was going to make and just say, look, I'm a businessman, I'm into tech, I'm in the future, streamlining government, I never was very partisan, but this is why I've become convinced that Donald Trump is the right guy and he's right for the future and for business and for young people. And that might have been somewhat effective in reaching some of the voters that they're trying to reach. Instead, he shows up, he does this crazy jumping up and down, waving his arms around for the crowd. He has no speech prepared. He gets up and he rambles for like 2 minutes about election fraud and runs off the stage. And Trump calls him Eli after calling him Leon a few weeks ago. Who is that helping? Is it really helping anybody? I don't think so. So there's a way that Musk could have done this that I thought would have been really helpful and effective to Trump. And yet he decides to turn it into some kind of clown show. And so I thought that, the photo that was taken, I think by AP or somebody, of him, leaping in the air with Trump kind of looking over his shoulder at him like, what the hell are you doing? I think it just undercut the whole momentum of what they were trying to do there.
Did you see that weird photo of the handshake with, I can't really do it, but he had that weird look in his eye. Terrifying it was.
And The other funny reaction I saw from a lot of MAGA was like, well, he's just socially awkward, and a lot of geniuses are socially awkward, and we can't really fault him for that. It's sort of like they're working to make some of the same excuses for Musk's behavior that they do for Trump.
Yeah. But he's not a genius. Neither of them are. This is what's so crazy. It's that we talked about this last week, this kind of measurement of wealth being an example of success, and it shouldn't be like that. And it's just very frustrating because we said at the beginning when Elon Musk paid $44 billion for Twitter, we were like, what's the ulterior motive? Because there's a whole lot at play here. And clearly it was to restructure Twitter, to take control of the town square, to be able to help rig the election effectively for Donald Trump by silencing liberal and progressive voices. He's now announced that he's going to do away with the blocking, so you can't block people anymore, and he's going to put that under the kind of free speech heading. I don't even think you can... There's something else he said. You can't like tweets or something. I can't remember what he said, but there were some crazy announcements a few days ago. And then, of course, there's the news that he's now paying people to kind of vote for Trump. Tell us about that quickly.
Well, he can't do that because that's illegal. So what he's trying to do is like a workaround, a way to kind of circumvent the law by being cute, by being tricky.
Yeah.
So he's making it where, like, if you go out and you sign up if you register somebody to vote in Pennsylvania, or you get them to sign this petition, which basically says like you're pro Constitution, anti-weaponization of government, and pro Second Amendment, and you get somebody to sign that petition in Pennsylvania, only in Pennsylvania, he will pay you $47 for each person you get. Again, this is where I'm telling you that I see the grift going, because the MAGA grifters that are out there that have signed up for this thing, I could see their wheels turning in their head, and I look at them and there's some of the usual suspects. It's like, how can we scam Musk out of a couple $100,000 here? So again, I think that this is kind of dumb. It's really stupid. I don't think it's going to do anything at all. But it's just Musk trying to use his vast fortune to buy an election and trying to find different ways to do that. Instead of just I think even Musk doesn't want to hand over a bunch of money to Donald Trump directly, because he knows, based on Trump's track record, that that's probably not going to be spent on the election. It's going to go somewhere else. And so Musk is trying to figure out how to spend the money himself from his own PAC, but he's never been in politics before. So he doesn't know how to use it effectively. And he hasn't hired anybody who knows how to use it effectively, because he thinks he knows more than everybody else. And so he comes up with this harebrained $47 thing that I think is going to do absolutely nothing.
As you know, he platforms Tucker Carlson, and Tucker Carlson found a home on X after he was fired from Fox News. Let's just have a little listen in on an interview that he gave this week, and we'll talk after about this incendiary language.
Which is like, nobody's even bothering to try to kill Kamala because it's pointless. What do you achieve? Nothing.
No, it's totally
Just find
right.
another puppet.
Exactly.
It's no point in killing.
It's deep and true, though.
Nobody's trying to kill Joe Biden.
It
would be pointless.
Totally.
Is the fact that someone's walking in and out and placing drinks because this was before they started rolling on this? Or is this actually during the episode?
It's during it. Yeah, I didn't really, that was another thing I picked up on too. I thought it was very odd that, like, in 15 seconds, they have this attractive blonde bringing them drinks. It's sort of, it's sort of like that whole alpha male bro thing.
Yeah.
Like, we're just a couple of bros that are rich and powerful, and we're shooting the breeze, and we have this attractive blonde waiting on us, letting everybody see that, right? You could have drinks on the table before the interview started, but it's much more alpha male.
Machismo.
Yeah, to have this on camera. Look at how this woman is bringing us our drinks while we're having this conversation. So it's like they're in a club or something. But yeah, I sort of fell out of my chair a little bit when I watched that, because that part of the interview, I watched the whole thing, and watching Tucker and Musk together for an hour was mind-numbing. I mean, just horrible. Two of my least favorite people to listen to, but I felt like I had to.
Thank you for your service.
To clip it. Yeah, it was Marine boot camp was easier than that.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, Musk had posted a tweet, joking or not joking, talking, musing about why no one had tried to assassinate Biden or Harris after the second Trump golf course incident. And, a firestorm erupted. I think he got a visit from the Secret Service. They don't say that, or FBI, but I think he did. And he deleted it. One of the rare times he ever deletes anything. But then he followed it up a week later with this. So obviously he didn't learn his lesson. And he made it even worse, because you see them there laughing and joking about it, the two of them. It's like, anytime I even use the word kill, assassinate, take out in a tweet or anything, I question it and second guess it. And I'm trying to be very careful how I phrase it, because I don't want anybody taking it the wrong way or misconstruing it. But obviously these guys don't care. They're just, oh, hey, why hasn't anybody tried to assassinate Kamala? Oh, well, she's incompetent. Why would they want to take her out? I mean,
but this is my point about
things like that.
The value of life with Republicans and people on the far right. This is exactly my point, is that they can enjoy this stuff. And it doesn't seem, it's like water off a duck's back. And yet, and that's why, the whole thoughts and prayers things, I mean, it just all plays into each other. It's very frustrating, because, the world is so much better than these people present it as. And the rest of the world especially, where life goes on, people are conscientious. They care about the planet. They care about the climate. They care about equal society and diversity and inclusivity, and they try and balance for gender in the boardroom. So much is going on in the rest of the world. Meanwhile, here in the United States, we have these two dicks sitting together, having a woman serve them drinks, laughing about the assassination of Kamala Harris. I mean... Yep.
Absolutely. I mean, of all the things they could talk about, this is what they chose to bring up as a topic, especially knowing the reach that they have and all the crazy right-wing nut jobs that are watching them. Knowing that, and they have to know who their audience is. Knowing that, they just don't care. They just don't care.
It's so interesting to me that, off the back of the first attempted assassination, there has been almost no coverage of who that guy was, his political allegiance, the fact that, we know that he voted for Trump, we know that he was a Republican, so was his father, all this stuff. Like, it's almost like there's a media blackout. Why do you think that is? I mean, my view is that because the Republicans invariably own much of the media, contrary to what they would have us believe, and that they just don't want to go there because it doesn't fit the narrative. The fact that Trump is so terrible that even his own people are turning against him and actually want to shoot him.
The media tends to do this with all mass shooters. I mean, school shooters too. It's like after 72 hours, they're move on to the next item.
Yeah.
Very, very rarely do we ever go back and take a look at the motives or whatever political motivations of mass shooters. With it, we get that sort of 48, 72 hour window where that happens in a frenzy, and then we're moved on to the next one. So I think that's part of it. Of course, what the right wingers narrative is, they also have the same complaint as you, Anthony. They complain that the media doesn't continue to report on things like that. And what their conspiracies are, because they have discovered that this person is really a secret leftist, and they're covering that up. They're hiding that. So that's what they would answer to your question, is that they do know, but they're intentionally suppressing it. I think it's just a matter of, it could be one or two things. It could be that this guy didn't have much of a footprint, social media wise or ideological wise, which is certainly possible. But I think the main reason is they're just on to the next story.
But it's a huge story. I mean, this is what's so frustrating, is that it's massive. You know, who is the guy that it's like, you know, Lee Harvey Oswald, for example, is like has kind of legendary status, and so did his politics for all the wrong reasons, right?
Yeah.
So why is this guy
Well,
now effectively erased? I mean, it is a massive story that he has allegiances with Donald Trump, and yet the Trump narrative is so egregious that it even turns his own people against him.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a different time. I mean, obviously, we used to spend a lot of time dissecting the motives and psyche
That's my point.
Of shooters, whether it's Sirhan, whether it's him, whether it's Mark David Chapman, you know. But we don't do that anymore. We really don't. It's like probably because there's so many. We're on to the next mass shooter.
It's terrifying. Let's go back to the Bible just for a moment, because we've got this chap who originally put out the initial criteria for public school Bibles that was very specific, and he suddenly has decided upon putting the Trump Bible into schools. Let's take a look.
To us, and we are proud to be the first state to put the Bible back in the classroom. Also, I have no knowledge of who will be the person who provides these Bibles to the schools. I don't know who the vendor will be. I don't know who's applied for that. That's a process that's ongoing that I will ensure is fair and transparent. But what I do know is that the left-wing media hates Donald Trump so much, and they hate the Bible so much, they will lie and go to any means necessary to stop this initiative from happening.
This is that guy from Oklahoma, right? Who we've spoken about before.
He's supposed to be concerned about kids' education, right?
Yeah.
This is what he does all day long. It's the culture war stuff. Yeah. So, I mean, who he's talking to right there is me, and who's written many stories about this guy, and a handful of other media outlets who have. But I think I probably had the biggest story on this. So one of the two biggest. The Oklahoman had the first story on it, and then I picked up on it because at that point it was a local story. But basically what it is he put out the criteria. He wanted to purchase 55,000 Bibles, which to put in the classroom, which is unconstitutional to begin with, but that hasn't been heard in court yet. But then, okay, so which Bibles are we going to buy? He puts out the criteria, and the criteria, there's only one Bible in the world that meets the criteria, and it's Trump's Bible. Has to be leather bound, has to include a copy of the Constitution and the Ten Commandments and some other founding documents. No Bible has that.
Yeah.
So when the Oklahoman, the newspaper audited, the different Bible sales, Bible companies around the country, there literally was only one Bible that met the criteria that this knucklehead put out, and that happens to be Donald Trump's Made in China Bible. And so it looked like he was about to spend millions of dollars until this. What I think happened is he knew exactly what he was doing. He knew that this criteria was going to force Oklahoma. Oh, look, there's only one Bible that meets the criteria. My hero, Donald Trump's Bible. But then media overwhelmed him, blasted him for it, called him out for his painfully obvious scheme because he's not smart enough to cover his tracks very well. And he has since reversed course on the criteria and now has changed the criteria and made it more generalized. So we will continue to watch this. It will certainly be interesting to see which Bibles they end up buying. It may not be the Trump Bible now, since he's probably blown that by being too obvious, but I'm willing to bet the money is going to go in the pockets of a very right-wing Republican Christian conservative company. It's not going to go to like a mainstream publishing house.
I watched I can't remember what they were. It was on YouTube. It was a Bible expert. I didn't even know Bible experts existed, but there was this guy, and he had taken it upon himself to make a YouTube video about Trump's Bible, where he kind of filmed the pages, the quality, the production, the print, as well as the content, obviously. And he was like, this is the most appalling Bible I have ever seen. He's like,
he's not
everything is wrong with it.
The guy's not political at all. He's very like, He's just a Bible, like you said. He's
a Bible
like
guy.
a Bible.
Yeah.
He what do you call it? He reviews Bibles.
That's right. Who knew that was a thing? But apparently it is.
Yeah. Well, he didn't even know it was made in China when he did that. Now he's got some more information.
Incredible. Well, there it is. Okay, let's stay on the biblical theme for a moment, because Donald Trump showed up at a memorial for the October 7 attack in Israel, and he firstly, he looks kind of weird with the yarmulke on his head. But secondly, his kind of solemn behavior, he just doesn't know what to do. Like, the guy has not an ounce of instinct for these events, right? So there's like a rabbi whispering at him the whole time as to what he can and can't do, and do this and do that. Let's take a quick look at the clip, and then we'll analyze it.
Yeah, can I take that? Would you like me to sign this? Which one? I love that. Thank you.
I mean, he empty vessel really is the right word. What's going on here, Ron?
So there's two very interesting things about this for me. Number one is there's a significant percentage of the MAGA movement that is very anti-Semitic. They're very, they're very Nazi-ish,
Yes.
and so many of them were pretty upset. That far right piece of MAGA that's pretty much openly anti-Semitic was really upset that Trump did this. And a lot of them were like, that's it, we're out, that's it. Trump's with the Jews, we're out, So a lot of them were, like, they don't mind when Trump says, if Jews don't vote for me, you're all mentally ill. They don't care. That doesn't bother them. But this bothered them, wearing that, going to the memorial service. They didn't like that. So that's the first part of it. But the second part is, like, Trump always makes everything about himself. He's not there to honor this rabbi that they were honoring at this memorial ceremony. He wasn't there for that purpose. He was there to promote himself. And so when he goes to these funerals or memorial service, he always makes it about himself. And so here he is presented with a prayer book to commemorate the service. And he asks the rabbi, do you want me to autograph it? Do you want me to autograph this for you? Like, he thinks that this rabbi wants a souvenir signed by him. And that's why they brought him in there to do that. He might as well start. I expect him to start tossing MAGA hats around. So this, again, it just goes to show you he's totally inappropriate. He totally doesn't know how to behave in these kind of environments. He doesn't care about other people, and he makes every tragic situation or memorial all about himself. And nothing illustrated that better to me than a clip of him offering to autograph a prayer book at a memorial.
To me, this really talks to the mental illness. And, again, it's a topic that has been completely ignored by the media in the analysis of Donald Trump. If you there are so many mental health professionals who have consensus, hundreds, about how unwell he is. And to me, just looking at him there and seeing the way he operated and the way he interacts with people and the opinion he has of himself, it was just, he is really an open book of sadness and mental dysfunction. And if only we'd focused more on that and listened to the science and listened to the doctors and understood that there are people who are so completely socially and internally flawed that they should not be anywhere near the White House, the Oval Office. I mean, I say he shouldn't even be the president of a golf club. I mean, we know about his antics on the golf course with the cheating and making himself the winner all the time. I mean, the guy is nuts. And this is another example of when you take somebody who is that unwell and you put them into an environment like that, a memorial service surrounded by people of faith, that he just falls apart.
And, at these services, I always watch when they do the prayers, when there's a good camera that sort of zooms in on him.
Yeah.
And what he does is this is a move that I've posted before, where when everybody's got their heads down and their eyes closed praying, he will open his eyes and look around. He does it all the time. He'll open his eyes and look around because he's not praying. He's not praying with everybody else. He's not listening to the prayer.
No.
He's just going, when is this going to be over with so it can be all about me again? That's what he's doing. He's looking around.
That's the sickness. That is the mental illness. What you're looking at there, the fact that, you have to be someone of humanity to be able to make a memorial service about a terrorist attack where people were murdered and raped and left for dead. You have to be a certain kind of monster to make that event all about you.
Right. Yep. And he is that kind of monster.
There's not many people, Ron, who would be that broken as an individual. And for it to be on show like that. And yet this guy is running for president.
Yeah, this was another thing that, again, right-wingers didn't comment on, Trump supporters. They were largely silent because they knew that it wasn't a good look for him. Yeah. Like I said, the only ones who weighed in were the ones who were upset that he was even there to begin with at a Jewish event. But the rest of them, in other words, like there's some things like that go viral like this did, where his supporters will come in and defend him. They didn't defend him on this one because they know.
It's all performative. Everything is for show. And that goes right into even his policies. He's never promised to reduce taxes for the working people or the middle classes. That's never been a policy offering from him. And yet people project into thinking, because he's like, I lowered your taxes, but he never did. All he did was lower the corporate tax rate and rely on trickle-down economics, which we know is a fallacy. And yet people project the fact that this guy is better for them and for the economy. Talking of which, let's talk quickly about the United Auto Workers that turned out to be anything but. This is this story about the kind of fake union. It wasn't even a union, was it? What's this story?
We have seen this time and time and time again from the Trump campaign, which are these staged fake events where supposedly these random people or people affiliated with a particular group turn out not to be. Whether it was the Charlie Kirk operative who is posing in the Chick-fil-A as a random customer who turned out to be a Republican Party operative, or the union rally in Michigan where there were people there with, union T-shirts on who were not union workers, Blacks for Trump, people where he's having, white people are wearing Black for Trump T-shirts. He does this all the time with the bodega that he did in the Bronx, where he acted like these were all in Harlem, where these were all people from the neighborhood in Harlem who came out to support him. And we later find out they were all members of the New York Young Republican Club that they shipped into Harlem for this particular event. And here we have it again, where there were a dozen people at Vance's rally wearing Auto Workers for Trump T-shirts. This reporter with the Detroit News, Craig Mauger, has since spoke to at least 8 of the 12 people he was able to get to talk to him. And not one of the 8 were auto workers. They said that a Trump operative gave them the shirts and told them to put them on. They weren't auto workers at all. So again, it's just part of the whole Trump campaign. It's all a facade. It's all fake. It's all staged. See it time and time again.
And yet people won't realize that until it's too late. And that's the frustration with this entire kind of performance art that is the Donald Trump candidacy, is that, eventually the penny will drop for people when they lose access to their Social Security or to their Medicare, or where they can't get access to services that they were entitled to previously, or where just nothing works. They're basically left for broke. We need to remind people that when he was campaigning for president the first time and he would talk about factories, I'm going to bring back factories, and Detroit was obviously at the center of that with the car manufacturing. And none of it came to fruition. I mean, he even stuck a shovel in the ground to talk about Foxconn. Do you remember bringing a factory to the US to manufacture iPhones and it just never happened. These things never happened. It's all about the photo op. It's all about, getting his porcelain veneers on camera. And he doesn't care about what comes next. And that's why I have so much sympathy for Trump supporters, because they've been sold a lie. I just want to shake them and go, you're voting for the wrong team. He's going to do nothing for you.
Yeah. Yeah, we see it time again. There's no substance here. I mean, his idea of dealing with crisis and tragedy is to parachute in, do a photo op, leave, and forget about it.
Yeah.
And then to say, the other side, they didn't go in there and do that. They didn't do what I did, therefore they don't care.
Yeah.
It's all about showmanship and substance free. I've used this analogy before. It's like they're eating chocolate for dinner over and over again.
Yeah.
They're getting fed chocolate for their dinner. And there's nothing, there's no nourishment. It tastes good. But the second it's gone, you're hungry again, and you haven't gotten any vitamins. I mean, that's basically what Trump does. He provides
it's junk
no
food.
Substance.
Yeah, you're describing junk food. His diet, basically. You're describing his diet. There is no nutrition.
Right. There's no nutrition. It's just all sugar. It's a sugar high. They get all geek. Oh, look, Trump went in there. Trump gave a speech. Trump, blasted Kamala Harris. Look how much he cares. And then he leaves and he's accomplished nothing. He's done nothing. It's the same thing as eating chocolate for dinner.
Tell me about Rudy Giuliani. He's filed an emergency motion. Is this actually against Donald Trump?
This saga has just been so bizarre, so strange. When Rudy got the massive judgment against him, in the civil case, he went in bankruptcy court to try and delay collection of the judgment. That delayed it. And in the bankruptcy proceeding, we learned that one of Rudy's biggest assets, he basically had three major assets. One was his condo in Florida, one is his apartment in New York, and the other is a $2 million unpaid legal fee that Trump owes, that the Trump campaign owes him. The Trump campaign retained him. He billed him $2 million for all of his work challenging the election fraud stuff, and Trump never paid him. And so now that all of Rudy's assets are subject to seizure and liquidation to pay this judgment, what that means is that unpaid legal bill, the court wants to get that money to give it to Shea Moss and Ruby Freeman. And they're about to do that. And so what Rudy basically filed this motion, his lawyer, because he's mortified that this could actually happen any day now. Where
before the election
is ordered, but right before the election, the court is ordering Donald Trump to pay Rudy Giuliani the $2 million he stiffed him, so that money can go to Freeman and Moss. And what Rudy is saying is, look, I'm not disputing that Trump owes me this money, and I'm not disputing that he never paid me, and I'm not disputing that it needs to be collected. I just want you to wait till after the election, because this is really damn embarrassing, and we don't want this to come out right now. That's the motion that he filed, which is just classic Rudy.
So what's going to be the outcome of this?
That's a very good question. I think the judge is not going to be interested in his foolishness. And I think that the judge is going to order this to be collected. But, again, whether the media is going to do a whole bunch of stories about that and blow that up, I don't know. That's what Rudy is concerned about, clearly. But our media hasn't done a real good job in this department. So we certainly did a big story about it that blew up and went viral, but not many other media companies. Most media companies kind of ignored this motion. I didn't see much coverage at all of it.
It does seem like the media really is covering all the wrong stuff. Do you get that feeling? I get that feeling. It's almost like they're like squirrel. They're so instantly distracted by a headline that actually doesn't have legs, but it's the sensationalism that draws their attention. Yet there are so many important things to talk about. I mean, I get very, I'm an environmentalist, give or take, and I watch all this coverage of these hurricanes, and there's like no one is talking about climate change. And it's like it's proven that these are as a result of the warming waters, and yet no mention of it. And it's like it must be diktat from the top saying, yeah, okay, you can cover the hurricane, but don't mention climate change, whatever you do.
Well, because that's not very entertaining. That sort of just brings people down. They want the entertainment value, the shock value, the storm, the aftermath, people being victimized, people losing everything, crying, fighting, arguing. That's what they want. They want the drama. But, going into like the root causes, that's sort of like taking it into a classroom now. And that's not entertaining.
Never mind the fact that you could actually maybe prevent the next big hurricane if you were only to reduce the fossil fuel output, and that really is a story for industry as well as the individual. I should remind people of that. Desantis has actually banned any talk of climate change, in any kind of government paperwork or anything in Florida. And in fact, we should talk about him because he's now using the power of the state and the Florida government and taxpayer money in his campaign to defeat the abortion amendment in Florida. Tell us about this story, Ron.
Well, I have documented all the steps that Desantis has taken to try and defeat the abortion rights amendment and put his thumb on the scale. And again, it's his right as a politician, as a citizen, to take a stand on this amendment. The problem that I have is that he's using the power of the state government to try and defeat a democratic movement, a democratic petition. And what we learned, of course, what he did is he had the Department of Health put out a commercial against it. He did an environmental impacts, economic impact study that he has going next to the amendment on the ballot. The language of that claiming that it's going to cost taxpayers a whole bunch of money if it passes. What else did he do? He has investigators right now checking the signatures to see if there was fraud on the petitions that were signed to get it on the ballot. So he's done so many different things, but none of them, they all pale in comparison to this move, which is there's an ad being done by a PAC that's very effective of a cancer patient, a woman who had a brain cancer, who was pregnant, who had to get an abortion. And she talks about under the current Florida law, she doesn't think that she would be able to qualify and would have been able to qualify in time for a life of mother exception under current Florida law. And DeSantis has threatened to criminally prosecute executives with television stations in Florida if they agree to run this ad. If they continue to run this ad, he will go after them and prosecute them because he claims that the ad is misleading. Look, political ads are misleading. They're shaded one way. They often fudge things. They often say things that aren't true. That's the nature of politics. It happens every day. DeSantis has run deceptive ads that are a little bit slanted one way or the other. That's politics. You can complain about it. You can make complaints. You can file complaints about it, but you don't threaten to criminally prosecute television stations for running misleading ads. That is literally fascism.
And this is, again, another example of how authoritarianism and the fascism that you describe has already arrived. We need to stop talking about it as being this threat that's off in the future and this is potentially going to happen if you don't do this or if that. It's already here. And DeSantis is as much a despot as Donald Trump. And we're seeing that increasingly from Republican governors where they, Greg Abbott is another one. These are mini Hitlers.
Yeah. And DeSantis doesn't take no for an answer. That's the thing. He's going to get his way no matter what. Yeah. He's going to find a way to get his way, and he will not hesitate to use the power of the state. We saw that, of course, with Disney. Disney criticizes him. Yeah. He pulls their charter. A Democratic prosecutor criticizes him on the abortion question.
Yeah. Fires him.
He removes him from office.
Yeah.
This is who Ron DeSantis is. Ron DeSantis is I think, even far more authoritarian than Donald Trump in many respects. Because he is more conniving and is more thoughtful about how to use the levers of government power, whereas Trump is more impulsive and emotional and pops off, but doesn't really know all the time how to harness and think.
Well,
think
it's all about him
plan.
with Trump, isn't it? Trump's like, how does this make me look good? Whereas DeSantis, his playbook is this far-right Christian nationalism.
Yeah,
so
if there's like the comparison is like two like bad kids in the classroom. Trump is the kid who's like throwing shit at the wall and throwing his pencil and flicking the ear of the person in front of him. DeSantis is the quiet kid who's scheming and plotting about how he can undermine the teacher in a sinister way. That's the difference between the two.
We have to finish in a second, but I want to end on this Melania Trump story, because she's obviously, we spoke last week about her. She's doing this book tour, and so she's doing some press. She hasn't really still appeared side by side with her transactional husband, but didn't she come out and say she was anti-abortion a few days ago as well? That kind of threw a bit of a curveball not anti-abortion, sorry, that she was pro-choice.
Yeah.
She threw that curveball into the media, and that kind of ricocheted for 24 hours or so. This time, though, she's now saying that she doesn't show up to these disaster zones anymore like she did when Trump was president because of the Biden-Harris administration. Let's take a quick look.
I remember when I visited states when it was a hurricane. I was there with people. I was praying with them, sharing the stories, and also serving the food. And we were there with FEMA, helping them. And I think it's very important that they see that they have support behind them and that they will be okay.
So what's her argument here? That she thinks that Joe Biden should be serving food? I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, right. I clipped that there, but before that, she was criticizing the Biden administration and FEMA and their response in North Carolina, and the reason why I didn't include that was because she did that, and then there was a long question by the right-wing interviewer Maria Bartiromo, I think, and then that second part of her answer. So I didn't include it all, but that was what she was saying. Look, I've been watching these Melania book tour interviews the last few days, and because I was kind of interested in how she was going to do this. And there's two ways she could have done it. She could have just talked about her life. I thought that that's what she was going to do. She was going to spend a lot of time talking about, being a model and emigrating and becoming a citizen and learning English and raising Barron and her entrepreneurial stuff and her philanthropy. I thought that that's really what she was going to talk about on her book tour. That is not what's happening. She is talking about politics a lot. She's criticizing Harris and Biden, and she's talking up Trump politically, which is a little surprising. Basically, what she's doing is she is repeating Donald Trump's own. It's almost like she's been programmed, because the phrases that she uses and the words that she uses are identical to what Trump uses. So it's like she has clearly given a rehearsed set of talking points before each one of these appearances, and it's all Trump drivel. It's like listening to her doing an interview on a book tour is like listening to Trump tweets being read on air. That's basically what she's doing. So it really has destroyed whatever myth that was out there that like Melania is a hostage and she doesn't really agree with Trump on all this stuff, is being thoroughly debunked by this book tour.
They're two peas in a pod, though, Ron. I really do believe that they really are meant for each other. And if he wasn't such a slob, then maybe she would want to spend a bit more time with him. But, the guy is a disgusting, adjudicated rapist, so why would you want to? My take on this is that he's probably said, you need to show up more to my rallies and to be with me on the campaign. And she's like, no. But when I go and do my book tour, I'll say all the right things.
Yep.
And that's part of the transaction.
I totally agree. That's the deal she made.
Yeah.
Yep.
Marriage, ain't it grand? Okay, listen, we have to finish, but great chatting with you today, as we do every Wednesday. If you want to download the audio podcast, you can do that later tonight. It drops wherever you get your podcasts. You can share this show, comment below, as of course you always do. We're very grateful. We're just, what are we now, like 26 days away from the election, so we only have a few weeks left of this meeting before voting day. So lots to do and lots of work to do. And please, if you haven't registered to vote yet, please make sure that that happens and get on with it. Okay. Ron, take care. See you next week. All the best.
You got it.